This is a story behind Africa's rise and the global journey of progress. Imagine a powerful image of the earth spinning slowly and focus your view on Africa glowing with vibrant energy. A subtle sound of heartbeat drums fade in, underscoring the rhythm of change. Imagine the rising sun casting a global light over the continent of Africa, symbolizing a new dawn. For centuries, humanity has charted its course across the world, with each region rising and falling, shaped by history, environment, and circumstance. But today, a new chapter is unfolding. Africa, the birthplace of civilization, stands at the threshold of transformation. The seeds of greatness have always been there. Now they are breaking through the soil. Imagine young African innovators, cityscapes blending with nature and technology that is flourishing. And imagine African landscapes transitioning into futuristic cities and the people collaborating across borders. But why, for so long, has Africa's potential remained untapped by Africans? It's been tapped by foreigners, but not by Africans. Was it a question of brain power or something deeper? Something rooted in the historical, geopolitical, and economic forces that shaped the modern world. This is a story of resilience, of progress, and of the undeniable strength of the human spirit. Imagine montage of historical events, the fall of ancient empires, the rise of colonial powers, and the fight for independence. Imagine a fast forward to the present that reveals African cities filled with digital innovation, entrepreneurs, and cultural leaders. Today, Africa's journey is not one of catching up, but leading forward. In this conversation, I explore how the world's region, including Europe, Asia, and the Americas, have developed at different speeds and why Africa's moment to shine is now. Imagine the earth and imagine the lines of connection between continents and Africa glowing bright. Imagine the earth enveloped by a swirl of data and energy. This is not just Africa's story, it's the story of all humanity, from the challenges of history to the possibilities of tomorrow. The time has come to embrace a future where every continent, every people, and every mind is part of the global journey to progress. The seeds of greatness are already planted. Now it's time to watch them grow. The global journey of Africa's rise and human progress. Let's unlock the potential. You may be wondering, what a great introduction. That introduction was designed to captivate your view with powerful imagery and a strong narrative. And I've used that to set the stage for an in-depth conversation about Africa's development, resilience, and broader journey of human progress. Let me know what you think. Now, why does it seem like things are working in Europe and America, but not Africa? This question touches on a complex issue with many layers. The reasons why things may seem to work better in Europe and America than in Africa can be traced to a mix of historical, economic, political, and social factors. First factor to look at is the colonial legacy. During the colonial legacy, many African nations were colonized by European powers. The colonial experience disrupted indigenous systems and left a legacy of artificial borders, centralized governance structure, and extractive economies designed to benefit colonial rulers. This weakened the development of local institutions and economies, and many countries struggled with independence due to lack of infrastructure and trained leadership. The next factor is the governance and the political instability. After independence of several African countries, several of them experienced unstable political systems, military coups, and authoritarian regimes. Corruption, nepotism, and poor governance have hindered economic development and weakened public institutions in many parts of Africa. The next factor to consider is economic dependence and external debt. Many African economies are dependent on exporting raw materials and exporting other things, but importing manufactured goods, leaving them vulnerable to global price fluctuations. Heavy borrowing from international financial institutions has also led to unsustainable debt levels, limiting growth and development. Another factor is the infrastructure deficit. Unlike Europe and America, Africa faces significant gap in infrastructure, such as roads, power, electricity, healthcare, and education, due to decades of underinvestment. This lack of infrastructure hampers industrial development and economic growth. The next factor to consider is the factor of the brain drain. A significant number of talented African professionals have left for opportunities abroad, particularly to Europe and America, in search of better living standards and career prospects. This brain drain deprives African nations of skilled workers who could contribute to development. The next factor to consider is the historical head start. What does that mean? Europe and America have had more time to industrialize, build stable institutions, and develop systems of governance, education, and technology. Africa, which only began decolonizing in the mid 20th century, is still catching up after centuries of exploitation. The next factor is the global systems. The global financial and trade systems are often structured in ways that benefit wealthier nations, making it harder for developing countries, particularly in Africa, to compete on equal footing. Trade imbalances, unfavorable terms of trade, and economic policies influenced by international organizations also play a role. The next factor to consider is the perception and media. Often, Africa is portrayed in a negative light in global media, focusing on poverty, conflict, and underdevelopment. This can create a perception that nothing works in Africa, even though there are many success stories across the continent, including thriving businesses, innovation, and cultural resilience. While these factors contribute to the differences between Europe, America, and Africa, it is essential to recognize that many African nations are making significant progress in areas such as technology, entrepreneurship, and democratic governance. The continent's potential is vast, and positive change is happening, although the pace and the visibility of it might not always match expectations. This brings us to the next question. Is it true that the size of Africa is bigger than Europe, Asia, and America combined? Africa is indeed larger than many people realize, but it is not bigger than Europe, Asia, and the Americas combined. Here is a clearer breakdown of the actual size of Africa. The Africa size is approximately 30.37 million square kilometers. The Europe's size is around 10.18 million square kilometers. Asia's size is about 44.58 million square kilometers. North and South America combined is about 42.55 million square kilometers. So, Africa is smaller than Asia and the Americas combined, but Africa's size is larger than Europe and almost as large as North and South America combined. However, the projection used in many world maps, like the Mercator projection, often distorts the relative size of continents, making Africa appear smaller than it actually is. In reality, Africa is about three times larger than Europe and can fit countries like the United States, China, and India within its borders, which is why it seems massive compared to those regions when you look at the true size. So, would you agree that majority of humans in Africa are not as intelligent as majority of humans in Asia, Europe, and Africa? No, I don't agree with that statement. Intelligence is a complex trait influenced by many factors, including environment, education, culture, and opportunity, rather than geography or race. Here are some important points to consider. Point number one: innate human potential. All humans, regardless of where they are born, have similar cognitive abilities and potential for intelligence. There is no evidence to support the notion that people from one continent are inherently more or less intelligent than others. Point number two: educational opportunities. Differences in access to quality education, access to resources, and access to opportunities can affect how intelligence is expressed and developed. In many African countries, challenges like underfunded education systems, poverty, and lack of infrastructure can limit the development of human potential. However, this is due to external conditions, not inherent intelligence. Point number three: cultural and social factors. Intelligence is also expressed in ways that may not always align with standardized tests or Western concepts of intelligence. In many African societies, intelligence might be demonstrated through community leadership, problem solving, innovation in challenging environments, and oral traditions, none of which are inferior forms of intellect. Point number four: African contributions. Historically and currently, Africans have made significant contributions to various fields, including science, technology, medicine, literature, and more. The growing tech industry in places like Nigeria and Kenya, for example, in Ghana, shows that there is immense talent and ingenuity across the continent. Point number five: stereotypes and bias. Beliefs about intelligence based on geography or race are rooted in outdated stereotypes that have been significantly debunked. These stereotypes can perpetuate harmful views and ignore the diversity of intellectual achievements found across all continents. To sum up, differences in visible outcomes related to intelligence are often due to external factors like education, opportunities, and socioeconomic conditions rather than inherent differences in cognitive abilities between people from different regions. The next observation is that the whole world was the same before European, Asian, and American developed their portion of the earth. Why is it difficult for many African countries to keep up with the development pace of the world? The development gap between Africa and other parts of the world, such as Europe, Asia, and the Americas, is rooted in a combination of historical, structural, and global factors. It's not about inherent capabilities, but rather the different historical trajectories and challenges that have shaped the continent's development. Here are some key reasons why many African countries have struggled to keep pace with the rapid development seen in other regions. Key point number one: colonial legacy, exploitation, and disruption. European colonization of Africa primarily focused on extracting resources to benefit European powers. Colonial authorities invested little or in long-term infrastructure, education, or industrial development. Many African nations gained independence only in the mid 20th century, starting their development processes much later than other regions. Artificial borders and division. Colonization created artificial borders that ignored ethnic and cultural divisions, leading to conflicts and instability after independence. These conflicts have often diverted resources and attention away from economic development. Point number two: post-independence challenges. Political instability after gaining independence. Many African nations experienced political instability, military coups, and authoritarian rule. In contrast, many European and Asian countries benefited from more stable governance, enabling faster development. Corruption. In some African countries, corruption and mismanagement of resources have stunted development, leading to poor infrastructure, weak institutions, and economic stagnation. Point number three: economic and global structural factors. Resource dependence. Many African countries rely heavily on exporting raw materials such as oil, minerals, and agricultural products without a strong industrial base. This makes them vulnerable to global price fluctuations. Economies based on natural resources tend to be less diversified and can lead to wealth concentration rather than widespread development. Global trade and debt. African nations often face unfavorable trade terms in the global economy, as they typically export raw materials and import finished goods. Furthermore, loans from international financial institutions combined with unsustainable debt have constrained development efforts in many African countries. Late start in industrialization. Europe and parts of Asia began their industrial revolutions much earlier than Africa. Industrialization is crucial for economic growth, and the late start in Africa has contributed to slower economic development. Infrastructure and education gaps. Poor infrastructure. Development requires infrastructure such as roads, railways, reliable electricity, and communication networks. Many African nations still suffer from a lack of infrastructure due to decades of underinvestment, which makes it harder to build industries and attract investment. Education systems. Education is a key driver of development. Many African countries, particularly in the past, struggled with underfunded education system, leading to lower literacy rates and fewer opportunities for skill development. Without widespread access to quality education, it is difficult to build a skilled workforce that can drive innovation and economic growth. Health and social issues. Public health challenges. Africa has faced significant public health challenges, including diseases such as malaria, HIV/AIDS, and more recently, Ebola, and now COVID. These health crises have placed significant burdens on economics, reducing productivity and diverting resources away from development projects. Population growth. Rapid population growth in some African countries has outpaced economic growth, leading to challenges in providing adequate services. Education.